Right, I'm joined now by Laura Blumenfeld, a former senior policy advisor to the US State Department's Israel and Palestinian negotiating team. Thank you very much for being with us once again. And I just wonder what you made of what President Trump had to say there. It does seem as if the UK and the US agreed to disagree.
Yeah, it was a fascinating point of contention between them. I think there are three important points to remember when we're talking about Trump and Israel and the war with Hamas. First of all, he calls the hostages our hostages. There are a few American deceased hostages that they're trying to release, but he's embracing all 20 of the live hostages and the remaining deceased ones. He has taken ownership of that issue. The administration really has prioritized hostages across the world, in fact, not just in Israel and Gaza. I think the second thing is he's not really a forgive and forget kind of guy. He's not a bygones will be bygones. And he comes back again and again when he's asked about the war in Gaza, why he supports it. And he says, you know, a lot of people want to forget October 7th. I haven't. So he's very much sort of in the past of October 7th and the future of perhaps a future threat by Hamas. And he's not so much focused on the here and now, which a lot of us are watching in real time, and it's grim. And then the third thing, you know, is sort of unpleasant to mention, but I think it could be playing a role, is his approach to the world as a sort of giant real estate opportunity. The other day, I heard him at a press conference and he was talking about countries, but he made a slip and called them companies. So I do think he is looking at and certainly seriously contemplating Gaza as an investment opportunity. And that is also skewing, I think, his support for Israel, because they're basically the wrecking crew, the demolition guys for his big Gaza Riviera plan.
Right. It was interesting because Keir Starmer said that his decision to recognize a Palestinian state was framed very much in the context of what he called a comprehensive plan for Gaza. There's been no suggestion really about what that comprehensive plan is that would be acceptable to both sides.
Absolutely. And there are multiple plans out there floating around and being negotiated. Tony Blair, the former British prime minister, also has a plan that was leaked today to the Israeli press. So what's one thing is very clear, though, where the Israelis and Hamas disagree, is for Israel, it's Hamas is out, and for Hamas, just to survive is to win. And that's why a negotiated agreement has just been impossible to clinch right now. So much so that Secretary of State Rubio, who you would think would be a kind of an advocate for soft power and diplomacy everywhere, said, you know, this is where the ideal world hits the real world in the Middle East. And in some sense, as Netanyahu would say, and those in the Trump administration might agree with, the only kind of power that matters in the Middle East is hard power.
Laura, do you have an understanding of what the Tony Blair plan actually amounts to?
Well, again, the details are sketchy, but they're talking about a kind of multinational structure. And you know, it does not. One interesting thing that it doesn't include is a kind of displacement of Palestinians. There's been a lot of talk about, would this be forced displacement? Would it be voluntary displacement? But the Blair plan, according to my sources, stipulates that there would be no displacement of the Palestinians temporarily or permanently, which I think is a very, very important point, and perhaps, you know, a true sticking point for Palestinians who truly fear that they're looking at a second Nakba, that if this isn't meant to wipe them out literally, it's meant to sort of displace them permanently.
But this, of course, imagines a ceasefire pretty soon. It doesn't look, though, as if there is going to be a ceasefire. It does seem as if Donald Trump is backing Netanyahu, or at least not publicly criticizing Netanyahu.
Yeah, I mean, this operation in Gaza is the most controversial operation in IDF history. Think about that. Of all of Israel's wars and operations, from the very top of the Israeli military and security structure, there is opposition and debate. So it does not look like they're backing down, because right now Netanyahu is in maximalist mode, and he believes that he needs probably 3 months till the end of 2025 to finish the job.
And just finally, how do you see this? Where is it all heading, do you think?
Well, we're going into the Jewish high holidays, and we're also heading into the UN General Assembly. I would call them the diplomatic days of judgment. You've got France and Saudi Arabia about to put forward a recognition of the Palestinian state, and many of Israel's traditional allies are going to follow suit. Whether Israel kind of ups the ante in a kind of diplomatic arms race and tries to annex part of the West Bank, that's only going to escalate things further. Hopefully, they can reach some kind of compromise ahead of the General Assembly, which is what behind the scenes, if you hear that sound of scrambling, it's Ron Dermer, Netanyahu's chief political aide, trying to kind of figure out some kind of compromise so it doesn't go nuclear at the UN.
Laura Blumenfeld, thank you very much for coming on the program. Thank you.